So what is learning anyway? Let us define some things up front. Teaching, or being taught, is when someone else is trying to make you learn. Learning is when you yourself reach out for knowledge. Studying means looking at something up close. Studying for an exam is code for memorization. Memorization, in context of standardized education, is gaining a temporary ability to mindlessly recall some facts for a matching test. Before I learned English, I memorized the opening speech in Star Trek The Next Generations and the theme song to Cheers. The way I did this was to write down the sounds I heard in the speech in my own native language, like this. These are the voyages of Star Trek Enterprise. I knew what the speech was about, but I wasn't able to match up the words quite yet. At 16 or so, I wouldn't know how to write it down in a way that I could get it right. What ultimately helped me learn English was cartoons and closed captions, and above all, moving to America. I had a reason, I had a want, I had a passion for English, and I was surrounded by it. The only thing that didn't help me learn English was Shakespeare, which I tried to read because everyone said it was English. Though I struggled with the balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet, I also fell in love with it. Sleep dwell upon thine eyes, peace in thy breast. Would I were sleep and peace, so sweet to rest. And I memorized a lot of quotes from the back of the book. They just roll off my tongue to this day. Learning requires that you have a need to learn something. Memorizing has nothing to do with learning. It is all about stimulus and acting. Yes, I am able to recite the speech from Star Trek in real English now, even though I learned it as babble and gibberish. But that is the most horrible way to learn to recite something from memory. To learn something means to have enough connecting fiber to know it without mnemonics or tricks. To learn something requires the involvement of a kind of love. A good example of that kind of love is coming to a country that you always wanted to live in and absorbing things. You don't memorize. Memorization is thin, hollow, temporary, easily damaged, and easily warped. I never sat down to memorize English words. I just had this massive, overwhelming urge to cheerfully understand what the hell the Ninja Turtles were talking about. I wanted to be in on their jokes. Once I learned to separate what I was hearing into words, which is just a function of becoming familiar with the language, I found that the words most frequently used were indicative of some kind of a structure, and then the meaning was found in the context. Context is something you get out of what has been happening in the cartoon, where you think the cartoon is going, where it usually goes, what characters usually do, and what you understood thus far. I only recently learned that the opening intro says, "Heroes in a half shell." I always heard it as "hap shell," H-A-P, and because I wasn't used to hearing that elsewhere, I assumed the word is just mangled by the lyrics, by singing. I was familiar with the word half and shell back when watching the cartoons, but I still think that half shell is a pretty odd way of describing something dome-shaped. It was a big deal for me personally to find something from Ninja Turtles in Inspector Gadget and the DJ Cat Show. For those of you who think it's crazy or silly to learn from cartoons, take a look at one of the better alternatives. Follow Me, Beginner, Part 1. I won't mention textbooks here, as they aren't useful at all. 6 months of closed captions is all it takes to get to storybooks. To end this note, I wanted to mention audiobooks. At a certain point, sooner than later, books like the Top 100 Poems and anything by Bill Bryson take care of the rest. So as long as the person is learning at their own pace, everything will work out. But to force someone to learn faster is very cruel and may put an end to that person's delicate curiosities. Making them feel stupid for learning at their own pace by grading them down will probably cause a great deal of long-lasting harm to their self-esteem and interests. Forcing children to learn within time constraints and punishing them for failure will only force them into temporary memorization as a way of protecting themselves. Unethical schools will exploit that to their advantage. They will keep the kids stressed out and purposely force them into meaningless memorization so that everyone gets paid. There's a concept of elaborative rehearsal that somewhat shines some light on this cruelty when contrasted with the notion of a maintenance rehearsal. But even elaborative rehearsal does not come close to what it means to actually really learn. A person can only learn, or as we should call it, soak up, inhale, integrate new knowledge when they are moving along a path that is of great interest to them. That means people can only really learn what they are really interested in, and will not learn if they are taught in segments by teachers. It is difficult to believe that schools do not work. It may be impossible for many to believe that they are an insult to the younger generations. To make headway in this discussion, we must resist speaking in bare abstract terms of learning or teaching. We must only speak in terms of specific subjects like mathematics or areas like science and focus on reproducible results. A child that learns mathematics for real will end up creating little computer game engines, little visualization frameworks, computer games, generative graphics, and even generative music. A child that is taught mathematics will only learn to recall few of the most popular formulas. Later in life, in a discussion about learning math for real, they will be ashamed of having only memorized formulas, and in the goodness of their heart, will still be unable to blame the schools. This interest in making formulas come to life with computers can be short-lived, in which case the person is likely to take to electronics, programming machines to take their art outside. Mathematics, as it is taught in school, will be disabling to most students. And the result of that is that they will not look into programming. They won't want to take their art outside. And a whole world will be denied to them. The math taught in school is cutting people off from a whole world of sweet curiosities. This has been going on for so long that we can only be speechless.